They're gonna be up first, Joe.
You're gonna introduce the process, right? You're gonna introduce the process.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You're gonna get
Yeah. Yes. Hi, nice to meet you.
Dan Jones.
Joe Anderson, how are you?
Nice to meet you. Okay, sir, Bud Camper. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Dan. Dave Archibald. Hi.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Make yourself comfortable. You want water or anything? Or?
Nope, I'm good. The manager already offered.
This is probably like summer vacation for you. From where Maine, so it snowed. Did it snow yesterday?
It snowed yesterday. We were completely clear, and this morning I think about 4 inches on the deck. Although this afternoon it was pretty much gone again.
I spent some time way north yesterday, and it was like they had the winter advisory things on the side of the road. Okay, so thank you for coming. We are filling a police chief's position in the town of West Newbury. This has been a long, arduous process, but a good one. We had a lot of good applicants that came in, and we, with the town manager, went through those. We interviewed, and you know how the interviewing process worked, because we could not be part of that interviewing process because of state ethics.
Or
Right.
we'd have to do it in public.
Or we'd have to do it in public. And we wanted to respect the people that made the final cut. We brought around probably 50 to 60 applicants down to that final cut. And then we brought that process down to a final 3. And we will be choosing that person on April 22nd. That is our next open meeting. You do not have to attend. There won't be any questions. If there are any other follow-up questions, we will relay those through our town manager, and then he would give those to us. But it's an open meeting, more than welcome to drive down, but there's no need for you to be here, unless you're notified that you need to be. If we really want to follow up on some questions after tonight. But I don't think that would be it. So we're gonna have a host of questions. Each of us have questions. We're going to ask the candidates, all 3 candidates, basically the same questions. Some are going to be unique to you because you're not a law enforcement officer in Mass, and the other 2 are. And the other 2, there'll be some, but basically they'll be the same questions. So we want to be fair and balanced so we get a good understanding of all 3. Joe, then Archie, and I will be asking the questions. Please, if you don't understand the question or take your time, ask to repeat anything. Pretty kind of laid back. This is a formal process, obviously. We do take it serious, but I want you to feel relaxed, and we need to know who you are. So, however that, take the time so we make sure that we do know who you are.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
You want to give I know this is not part of order, do you want to give an opening, introduction first?
Would you like, and I would try to keep it minimal,
Yeah.
but if you want to just, why you maybe pick this, apply for this position, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
I mean, we heard what you said last time, so no reason to.
We did watch the tape.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said in the first interview, my whole life I've had to live wherever circumstances took me, and now I'm in a place where I can live wherever I want to live, and this is where I want to live. I would say that's the simple answer as to why I want to be here. I know people, other chiefs locally. In fact, I even know an abutting chief, and I've heard nothing but good things about the town, about the department. Obviously, I do, my research just like you researched me. I researched this area as much as I could especially before coming to this point. And again, I can go over my history if you like, but I don't want to take time since that's already been done.
Okay, just to talk about the opioid crisis, obviously it exists, 4 or 5 years ago, we'd probably say it doesn't exist in our town per se, but it does. So how would you, this is a very open-ended general question, so how would you approach and police that issue?
Well, like you said, any time you have a community like this, and it's very similar to where I am now, there's not like some places where you're going to have deals going on street corners or things like that. If what is here is going to be very hidden, so we obviously have to work with whatever drug enforcement agencies work in this area to make sure that we're doing what we can with the dealing to the extent we can do it. I would say the most important thing, though, is prevention, and make sure we're educating people and doing everything we can do from a town standpoint to keep people from using in the first place. By the time they're on it, it's a very long road to get them to stop. So there are policies and things that a town can do, even as far as starting from when kids are little, looking at now the Juuls, the electronic cigarettes that people are smoking, cigarette use, teenage alcohol use. All of those things are factors into people who eventually move on to heroin. So looking at all those things to try to stop people from getting on in the first place, and I realize that's a long-term plan, but I think that's very important to look big picture at it. As far as once people, if you identify people who are on it, there are a lot of places that offer treatment, but in most places there is a big gap in the areas of reintegrating people into society, getting them, back to having a primary care physician, having proper housing, having a job, even reconnecting with the church if that's applicable, or reintegrating with their family. So you have to look at the whole picture. It used to be that when you talked about law enforcement and drug use, it was, okay, we're going to put everybody in jail, and that is not the solution, especially with this. And I would say a large percentage of users never come in contact with law enforcement anyway. So I think that's a very narrow viewpoint. Obviously, if we have people who are dealing, if we have those types of issues, then we can do that from that perspective. But I think we need to look much bigger picture. And that goes back to being in the schools and having a relationship with people between, especially kids, because they're going to know more than the elderly population as to what's going on. Kids typically hear things and see things that we as adults don't see, whether it's in the schools or people their age or even older brothers and sisters. They're seeing a lot more. So when you have a relationship with the kids, you're going to see more, hear more, and hopefully be able to prevent more.
Okay, great. Social media, how would you incorporate that into West Newbury policing, or should you?
Absolutely, and it's hard at an agency this size to really have a full attack. If you're going to be on Twitter, you need to be Johnny on the spot with it and get things out immediately. If you don't have people in place who have the time and the know-how and the right sense of humor, if you will, to be able to reach the community, you're almost better off not having it than not doing it properly. Facebook is a little easier to do because it's not as time critical as something like Twitter. But again, you need to be able to get people to follow you, which means you have to entertain them as well as educate them. If you're just posting, when there's a street closure, you're going to get a certain percentage of the population. You need to do things, and I would imagine that everybody has heard of Bangor Police Department. Has anybody seen their Facebook page in Maine? They have.
A little far up for us.
What's it look like, Angus?
Yeah.
It's a doctrine of justice.
Yeah.
Doctrine of justice, for anyone who's not familiar, you have to Google it. It's actually quite broadly.
I have to say this. He's going on vacation this weekend. He's going to Bangor.
One of the stops.
So they literally have a nationwide following. Little Bangor PD up in the middle of nowhere in Maine has a nationwide following because they have somebody, that's all he does, that's his full-time job, is to
Really
be creative on Facebook.
Can I ask you a question? Now, is that an outside person, or is that an administrator, or is
No.
that actually a police officer?
They have he's actually a sergeant, And that's what he does. And he's very funny. Again, it's a fine line to walk, but he's very good. And an agency this size, we wouldn't be able to dedicate, obviously, somebody to do that full time. But you still have to, what you do put out has to be entertaining. It can't just be informational. And I'll go back to relationships. You need to have relationships with the community to have people want to follow you.
Does he make jokes about Massachusetts people driving when it goes from 70 to 50 in that one spot, and they have 5 people on the side of the road pulling people over and giving them tickets?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know.
That ever happened to me going to Newfoundland, but yeah. So they do. There's a spot in Bangor where it's like 70 up there, or whatever it is, and then it's like 1 mile where it goes to 50, and you don't even realize it.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I don't follow it myself. I have other things, but I've seen every once in a while I see it, and again, I know they have this huge problem.
It's actually been serialized. It's been picked up by some of the print papers up there. There's actually a column on the Duck of Justice. It's really a big thing.
What is it? Duck?
The Duck of Justice.
Duck as in quack quack?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So can you talk about how you would go about, or what procedure you would use to hire and to promote somebody? So kind of a tandem, 2-part question.
So hiring, and I'm sure you're aware of this, hiring it's tough right now in law enforcement. I'm sure you've seen all the negative image that's been cast upon law enforcement. And the economy is good right now, which means there are great public sector jobs. So when I got hired, and I won't talk about how long ago that was initially, for every opening, there were 100 applicants. So if a department had 10 openings, that was 1,000 applicants, and that was true, departments big and small across the country. Now, departments are having to hold 2 and 3 and 4 processes to get one viable candidate. And any consultant that you talk to, there are obviously consultants all over the place who talk about law enforcement, are saying you're better off leaving them unfilled than getting unqualified people. It is a huge problem.
So how do you?
So the things that we can do as an individual department, money is a short-term motivator. So you can't just throw the highest salary out there and expect that you're going to draw in the most people or keep the best people. You need to be in the mix. It needs to be, relative to everybody else in the surrounding area, but you can't just look at money, which leaves the work itself and the reputation of the department. Law enforcement is a very small community. And when I say law enforcement, the people who want to get into law enforcement typically know people, or if they're looking to jump ship and go from one agency to another, they're going to know where the good places are to work and where the bad places are to work. And so the whole key to me, big picture, is just having a good relation, or a good what's the word I'm looking for? Have a good reputation as far as being a place to work. I mean, like I said, once, especially for this round of interviews, I began to really reach out to people, and like I said, I know a few chiefs in the immediate area, and I dug, as deep as I could, as much as they could tell me about, is this a good place to be or not? So, and everybody else who's going to commit, because this is a career choice for somebody. This isn't somebody looking to work at McDonald's for 2 years before going off to college. If somebody's getting into this job, they're looking at it, do I want to attach myself to this place for 20, 30 years potentially?
What about the promotion process, promoting somebody? How do you approach that?
So the promotional process, I think I don't like tests as a rule. I think because people can study for a test, and that may or may not equate to being a good leader within an agency. So I tend to not like them. I would say you have to look at a little bit of everything, time and place, but that alone shouldn't be it. education, meaning, college degrees, but again, that alone shouldn't be it. A degree is great, but it does,
What do you mean by time and place?
just,
I had a question on that one.
yeah, just experience.
Oh,
If you've been an officer for 2 years versus 20 years. Now, again, that 2-year officer could be better than that 20-year officer for a myriad of reasons, but I think you have to look at that. If you have two people who are equal, somebody with 8 years is going to be better than somebody with 2 years just because they have more experience. If they're equal,
So
right.
you're saying look at them holistically.
Right. So just like education, a degree doesn't make one person better than another person, at least in this job. It makes them better than themselves, before they got that education, that specific degree. And then you have specific education to law enforcement. So if you were, let's say a SWAT team member, an investigator, some other field training officer, some other piece that made you better or gave you a different view of the job than just patrol, it's going to make you a better supervisor if you have that bigger view. Having said all that, and then obviously some kind of interview. Having said all that, I think it's important to kind of set a standard and then try to stay with that so that every 5 years you're not saying, okay, now if you want to be a supervisor, you need to do this. And then 5 years later you change and say, okay, well, if you're going to be a supervisor, now you have to do this. You don't want to change the finish line on people. If people know education is important and people know, certain training is important or things like that, then you want to be able to let them go for that finish line.
So be consistent. Okay. All right, my last question. Angus asked you this in the preliminary interview, and so I'm not paraphrasing what you said, but it was a difference between Maine and Mass, and I realized, you made the change from Florida to Maine, which is that's a pretty big change. So coming to Mass, and I know you said, and this is not how you said it, but you basically kind of, a chief is a chief, so you're a leader of the department, which that's true. But what about the specifics of Massachusetts? Because that would be new. There are the legal aspects of it, and I would imagine there's others. How do you make that jump?
So obviously, there would be certain things I would have to learn, and being in law enforcement as long as I have and having the connections that I have, like I said, I can literally call the chief next door, one of the abutting chiefs, and say, what do I need to learn? I also know chiefs who have retired from Massachusetts and come up to Maine. I would use them as a resource and say, okay, what are the differences? As far as there are probably some procedural things that I don't know versus learning, what the burglary laws are here. I mean, we all know that breaking into a business and stealing things is wrong. Right? And that's true in every state in the country. So I will have to learn those types of things over time as I, read reports and try to wrap my head around different investigations. I will have to understand the laws. But that's just a matter of, okay, what is the difference? Where are the thresholds? Because in one state, $1,000 might be a misdemeanor, moving on to a felony. In another state, it might be $2,000. So those are the things that are relatively easy to learn. It's the procedural things that I will have to actively go out and chase down and find.
Okay. All right. You can ask that. I thought that was with him. Oh, okay. All right.
Everyone, I would say.
Why don't you ask? Well, no, he's next, so let him. He only has
I
three
don't want to
questions.
ask.
Okay, I'll ask. I have another one. I have one too that I wanted to ask on the phone, so that would be good for me.
Okay. The population of Massachusetts and West Newbury, even more so than Massachusetts, is aging. What changes in police procedures and activities and what do you think, and resources, what do you think we should do to address this issue?
Well, like any population, I think we need to be proactive in reaching out and making sure that they're aware of our services. And I believe you have a service here, the wake-up call or the daily call to check in for senior citizens who want such a thing. So programs like that are fabulous. It's just about, again, making sure that there is a relationship there. I did coffee with the chief, and still do in my current role, but I have found that I don't get that much as I publicize it. You know, we put it in the paper, we put it on Facebook, and you know, we do all these things to get the word out there that the chief's gonna be up there. You can ask him anything you want, and we don't get that great of a turnout. So what I do now, I still do that occasionally, but I find it's much more effective for me to go to these senior groups or to these church groups that have luncheons and talk to them. Because if they know Dan the person, not just Dan the chief, they're much more likely to come up and ask about, hey, what's this, or what can I do about that, or I have this problem. Or people might come up and say, I have a suggestion. I would say, I can't believe how many times members of the public will come to me and say, hey, I have this idea for this, what do you think? And a lot of times they're great ideas. So I just think it's about communication as far as that's concerned.
Give us a couple examples of innovative policing programs that you've worked on or maybe implemented.
So, I mean, you know, I've done, again, we, in 2 different agencies now, I've started Citizens Police Academies. That's not anything new, though, other agencies, and I assume you know what they are.
Give us a couple sentences about it.
So it's basically, it's a 10-week program, typically, maybe one night a week for 2.5 hours, where members of the public can come in.
2.5 hours, really?
And for 10 weeks, one night a week, where they can come in and learn about everything that a law enforcement agency does, from traffic stops to drug investigations to crime scene investigation to, you know, just everything. Being a school resource officer. Just a class on laws and how we have to apply laws. Every time I do one of those, the feedback on those is just absolutely amazing. I would say that even though we're a small department and it might be some work for us, I would say that would be a huge thing for us to do if it's not being done here already.
I'm just curious, do you get people that are like wannabe cops or is it people just want to learn or all different kinds?
Get everything. Because they have the time, we typically get some older people. But the current class that I have going right now, I have an 18-year-old, 3 20-year-olds, some people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Probably my average age is in the 30s, which is fabulous. I like to have that range. To me, the perfect person would be a homeowner in town who has somebody in the school district that owns a business, you know, because they're affected by us in so many ways. I would say that it's not about programs. It's just about looking for opportunities to build that bridge. Again, there's, you know, I don't think reinvented the wheel, but I am good at stepping back and saying, okay, common sense. How am I going to get the most bang for the buck? How am I going to reach the most people with the limited amount of time and money that I have?
Okay. We've had it's not a revolving door, but we have had some turnover in the management of the department in the past 4 or 5 years. We've had 2 chiefs. There's presently an interim chief. If you came in, how would you build consensus? How would you try to get everybody on board with you, especially you know, coming from outside the department?
So I've done it. You know, I came in as an outsider in my current role, and I would say that there's two things that are huge. One is, before doing anything, the first thing that I would have to do is build a relationship with the people of the department and the other departments and everybody in the town and the community. But just talking specifically about the department, I would have to build relationships with them. If there is not a personal relationship with the individuals in the department, then it doesn't matter how great my ideas are. I could cut the budget in half and pay everybody twice as much, and it wouldn't matter if people didn't believe in me and know that I believed in them. That is first and foremost the most important thing. The other,
How would you say that worked when you did do that?
oh yeah, it works very well. And I've always had that philosophy. I've never had to do it quite in the role that I had here because I was a complete unknown. So it worked very well.
No, but you were moving to a different town.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying, is I did it there where I am now, exactly what I would be doing here, and it worked very well. So I would say building relationships, and it can't be fake, because if you can't fake something like that. Like, if I'm going to be working with everybody in a department, I'm going to want to have a relationship with them. I'm going to want to know that I can trust them, and they have to know that they can trust me. The second thing is to let people make decisions. I think as a leader, we have to set expectations, give people the ability, the tools and the power to make decisions, and then hold them accountable for the decisions that they make. If my sergeant has to come to me and say, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this for everything they want to do, then I don't need that sergeant. I may as well be the chief and the sergeant. And when you give people that kind of power, it's empowering to them, not to be redundant there, but it's empowering to them, and it gives people job satisfaction when they have control over what they do. The key is they have to be held accountable for whatever it is they're doing. That's why you have to set that expectation first.
Okay, Glenn, I have a couple others if we have time, but go ahead.
Are you going to ask that one?
I just did that, yeah.
No.
I did that. Yeah, I did.
Okay. Wow. Okay, I missed it. We asked you a question about the population of West Newbury aging.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, maybe I was too worried about asking that question. Thank you, sorry about that. I'm gonna piggyback on that one for 1 second. I'll leave that one. Okay, can you tell me, one question I have about, I'm gonna ask you one question about your resume first before I get into these specific questions.
Sure.
You said that you had 25 sworn officers. What does that mean?
So, meaning law enforcement officers, so that includes me to the office. So, all of the command staff, all the certified law enforcement. No,
we didn't breakdown of that.
Yeah, we don't have any reserve officers.
Oh,
so those are all full-time. Right.
I didn't understand.
Right.
I didn't know what a sworn officer. I know what a sworn officer was, but I didn't know if it was going to be some type of breakdown that I wanted to know. Yep. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Can you tell me, describe your philosophy about an SRO? And then I have a second part to that question after.
So, so I think some departments or not, I shouldn't say, I hope no departments feel this way, but I know sometimes the public feels that the SRO position is where the old cops go to retire so that they can keep collecting a paycheck, but they're not out on the street anymore. And I've heard things like that from the public at times. It's kind of scary. I would say that the SRO position is probably the most important job and definitely the hardest job in the department. And it's a more political job than the chief, because the SRO has to live up to the expectations of the students, the school staff, the school administration, who has a different wants list that the school staff does and the students do, then the police department, their coworkers, and then the police department, meaning the administration and by extension, the town. It's a very difficult job. Ultimately, what they have to do, and I'll go back to relationships, their job first and foremost is to build relationships with the kids. Period, the end. They have to be mentors, they have to be teachers, they have to be just that trusted person that students know they can go to. At times, will they be a disciplinarian for the school? Yeah, probably. At times, will they have to be a police officer? Yeah, probably. But those other pieces are much more important. My school resource officer in the high school just passed away at the end of February unexpectedly, died of a heart attack. And I spoke at his funeral, and there were just an unbelievable number of people. From the time that we picked the time and place for the funeral to the time we had the funeral was less than 48 hours. And there was no parking. We had parking for 50 cars, and we were expecting close to 3,000 people. So we had to bus everybody in. It was a snowy morning, and we still got 2,500 people. And one of the things that I said was, his name was Pooch. One of the things I said was, okay, I want you to raise your hand if Pooch made you feel like you were the most important person to him, if you were his favorite. And half the room went like that, including they actually closed the school district for the day, so the place was packed with students. That's what an SRO has to do. He has to make every student feel like he cares about them and they are his favorite.
The other part to that, I'm not sure if this is going to be unique to you in the sense that we have a regional school district.
Right.
And the high school is in the middle school. Well, middle school's kind of been broken, but high school is in West Newbury. So we share costs with the district, and then obviously the other towns, but the other towns benefit that. So it's kind of a unique situation, and then and I'd like you to kind of describe a little bit how you would handle that, because the SRO is not 365 days a year either. So is it
365 days at the school.
at school? Yeah. So how would you kind of, as in your management style, be able to maybe weed through that and make sure that everybody, all the players are happy?
Well, it's just about communication. It was the same situation that I had when I was the deputy chief in Kennebunk. We were a regional school district, and there were actually, we provided some SROs for the schools that were in our town, and the other towns provided SROs for the schools that were in their towns, the elementary schools. And it's, even though it's one district, we had the only high school. But again, I think at their level, and I don't know, if you have multiple SROs or if it's just the one provided here. So then that SRO just needs to make sure they're communicating not just with me, but with the other chiefs, or whether it comes through me and goes to the other chiefs then need to realize what's going on, because things that are happening at school, the students, when they go back to their hometown, if they're coming, to hear from other towns, when they go back, there might be family things that town may need to know about, or other things. So it just, there needs to be a communication in place so that everybody knows how things are going to get communicated, so that it's not left to guesswork. How are you going to find out if this kid has this, if there was a domestic at their house last night or whatever, and how we're going to get that information out to everybody.
With an understanding that you're not completely familiar with all the facets of the present situation, what new types or any type of training would you like to see or institute for our officers, for the police in the future, or anything like that?
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of tough without knowing. I would say that the biggest thing, and this is...
You can answer that question. It already might be existing, but that,
Right.
that would, whatever you think about training, how you feel about training, and
What's
you would like
important to you.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've done, and to me it seems so simple, and yet other chiefs look at me like I have three heads when I say these things sometimes, and that I like to do a lot of small trainings rather than one big training. So especially when it comes to firearms or defensive tactics, where we learn how to handcuff people and things like that. I'm sure if anybody's ever played any sports or golf or anything like that, if you practice once a year and then you go out and you try to do something, how proficient are you going to be? Which is what a lot of police departments do when it comes to those physical types of things. So there are ways to do that are cost effective, and it's especially with firearms. You don't even need to pull the trigger. You can do dry drills and just practice doing different things. So I think repetitive training is very important. Just as a philosophy.
Say something requires I'm just playing devil's advocate, but say something requires an outside trainer, how would you have that person, in other words, just even on a financial basis, how would it be feasible to have that person come in 6 times to train 2 people each time? You can't do that.
So yeah, but with any of those skills, there are very basic things that could be practiced over and over and over again. And a trainer could show us, okay, here's what I want you to practice. And then the next time we do a big training, you will have practiced, and then you just watch each other practice.
Okay.
I don't think it doesn't need to be a big formal, and I think that's sometimes we get hung up in training that, okay, we need to block X amount of time to do this. Trainings can be very short, and I would rather see, something and I don't know what the shifts are, if there's overlapping shifts, or I'm sure there are times when it's slow, when, okay, we're going to take 15 minutes and do this, and maybe do, this discipline for 15 minutes this week. So everybody has to take 15 minutes this week at some point during the shift to do this. And then the next week, we're going to do something else. And then the next week, we're going to do something else. So there's always a little bit of training rather than saying, okay, everybody has to come in for this department meeting, for 8 hours once a year or things like that. I would say one of the things that is the front lines right now for us is mental health issues. And so we'd have to make sure that we are on top of the latest training with that. That's just a tough thing, because anytime the community, even in the nationwide community, falls short, and I think we're falling short with our mental health help for anybody, it winds up in law enforcement's lap. So I think that's one thing that we really need to be on top of, because that has a lot of potential to go south for everybody involved.
Thank you. To piggyback on Archie's question about our aging population, the Department of Motor Vehicles renews driver's licenses for 5-year periods in Massachusetts. I'm not sure in Maine. The elderly may become unsafe on the road during that 5-period time. How would you monitor or address that issue? Because that issue is a very, very sensitive issue. How would you handle that? Because that's happened in this town with chiefs that had to go to a home, and it's always a very sensitive and prideful thing. How would you handle something like that?
Well, I don't know what the laws are like in Maine and in Florida, where I started. That's not something that the police really have say over. We can write a report, and then it goes to the state for them to determine whether or not the license can be taken. And I don't know what the law is here, but it comes down to, again, having a relationship with the community, so that when I walk in the door, people know me and they trust my judgment, and they believe that I'm there for them as well as for the town. And obviously this town has, from what I understand, 4,500 people, so I can't get to know everybody personally, but I will quickly gain a reputation, and that will carry so far. So yeah, I mean, it's just about being able to deliver bad news or have a conversation openly and honestly, but there needs to be a reputation and a relationship up front. I can't, if I were to walk and knock on somebody's door tonight and say, I'm going to take your license away, or you have to give your license up, I don't think that would go well.
Okay. I would assume that you've had some experience negotiating contracts.
Yes.
I would, so I would ask you what your philosophy of that is, in supporting the town and the town manager on negotiating. We have a dispatcher contract that you'd be responsible for if you were the chief, and also police. So if you could just a little bit about, like, how would you handle that with the town to negotiate that?
So the most important thing is to not show my hand. Obviously, if I feel that the police, the officers are entitled to something, or it would be beneficial to give them something, then that's a conversation between the manager and myself, not between me and the officers, until we are on the same page, to make sure I'm not, again, then making the manager the bad guy, or the select board the bad guys in anything. I think there are times when what's best for the town is to give the officers what they want, and I think there's a time what's best for the officers is to give the town what it wants. And I think both sides I've seen where it's a negotiation, and which means you're trading this for this. So I think it's being reasonable on both sides, but making sure that we as management are presenting a united front. Obviously, I would do it respectfully, but if I disagree with a direction that the manager's going, behind closed doors, I will jump up and down and make my feelings known. But I think it's very important to have a united front outside of closed doors.
Is your present town, are the officers in one union, or
Yes.
are there higher officers in a different union, or how's it work?
It's all one union. The officers and sergeants are in one union, and then the lieutenant, deputy chief, and I are non-union.
Okay.
This is kind of just like a different type of question, but I want to ask it just to see. To some people, the first impression of a police department is to walk in and talk to somebody through 2 inches of bulletproof glass and a microphone. Do you find that off-putting? And if you do, what would you do to try to get a better relationship with the first impression of the town?
Yeah, I think it's for me it's kind of normalized, because that seems to be the way every police department is now. So I think it's normalized. I think what's more important is how they're treated, through the glass, if you will. And if people are heard and respected, that goes a long way. If the person behind the glass is dismissive, that's a huge problem. So like I said, I just think it's so normalized now that I'd be surprised to walk into a police department anywhere and not have bulletproof glass. So.
Okay. Do we have any follow-up? You guys have any follow-up questions you'd like to ask? Joe?
I'll ask a sort of a practical one. Just so we've in the past different chiefs have asked the board and the town to fund additional officers, and always with the intent of providing better services and so forth, and having more full-time people available, especially on overnight shifts, but also by having more full-time officers, the intent was, okay, we'll be able to cut down on our overtime expense. And our experience is that has not happened. Did you have any thoughts on that, or what's happened in your department, or tell me a little bit about that.
So,
We like to not see overtime continue to always go up. It doesn't make sense because there's still the same number of hours in the week.
right. So, when I was the patrol commander in Kennebunk, I was able to reduce the overtime greatly, not by adding people, just by management, by, again, common sense management of the overtime. Without seeing how overtime is being used here, that's hard to do, hard to try to figure out what to do. I think if the shifts are being covered, then any additional personnel would probably, in my mind, would have to have a specific purpose, not just to add somebody to patrol, unless there was really a shortfall. Again, it's hard to say.
Oh, in other words, just because we have, I don't know, 4 people on at this particular time, maybe we just need 3 at that time or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and it's hard. It doesn't appear, based on your crime statistics, that you're overridden with crime here. So, and that's a great thing. But what those things don't tell are all of the other things that go on, all of the service things.
Services?
Right. All the other services that or obligations that the police department has. That it's very hard because as time goes on, the requirements, the training requirements, and the time that it takes to the computers and the videos and all those things take up more and more time every year because there are more, state mandates and federal mandates, and again, just the DAs always want more, and especially in this world of videos, and I don't know what you have for video systems, all of those take time to deal with. And it used to be when I started, if I pulled somebody over and I said, you were going 40 and a 25, can you slow it down? I would walk back to my car and then I would drive away. Now if I give that verbal warning to somebody, at least where I am, their verbal warning becomes 7-8 minutes at the computer when you get back to the office, because we track absolutely everything now through the computer. Every time you pull somebody, even if you don't write anything down, don't even give them a written warning. If you just say, hey, can you slow it down for me today? Put your seatbelt on, but whatever. If that's all you do, you still have to go back and
you have to document.
You have to document it. It's 7 to 8 minutes, and those are the types of things that have changed over the years that take up so much more of our time. And I don't want to get on a soapbox, but like DAs, what used to take a district attorney a half hour to decide to prosecute for, say, a drunk driving arrest, it would take him a half hour to make that decision. Now it takes him 4 hours to make that decision because they have to go back and watch all the videos. It's just the world that we live in. Things are so different now than they were.
Do you see yourself as a chief that would be in the office barking out commands, or being in a patrol car, or and maybe not the barking is not the best way, or a hybrid, So, you understand basically the question?
Based on the way you asked the question, I have a great answer for you.
And also, that's the animal control person.
Yeah. So
Barking, it's good.
What I can say is, I can tell you what I do now and what I've always done is, like I talked about earlier, having a relationship with the guys. The guys have to see me, and girls have to see me as one of them. If they don't see me as one of them, again, I'm useless. So for me to sit in my office and just tell people what to do is no way to manage. I have to lead by example. Having said that, a lot of what I should be doing is being in the schools or town meetings, whether it's at a church or some other organization. I need to be out, not sitting behind my desk, like you said, barking out orders or doing whatever I'm doing. I need to be out in the community. Should I be out doing traffic stops? Probably not, because you probably don't want me to get into something that I shouldn't get into. But when something does happen, I'm the first one to jump out. You know, if there's a major crime going on, I'm the first one out the door, and I want to get there first. And usually, once the sergeant gets there, and there's several layers in between us and my agency now, he's the boss because he knows the people, he knows his team, he knows the equipment, he knows the officers from the surrounding communities if they're coming to help. So I, at that point, become, tell me what to do, boss. I'm just an asset for you right now. If you need me to stand on perimeter, I'll do that. And then if they want my input on something, or if they want, ultimately it's my job to shoulder the responsibility. I'm going to say, tell me what you want to do, and then we'll talk it through and then do it. So.
No, I'm good.
I'm good.
Do you have any questions of us? This is you a little bit. Do you want to say anything? No?
No, I mean, at this point, there are a lot of questions I could ask, about what you see as the issues in the town, but I think I covered that with the town manager when I spoke with him. That would be the biggest thing, and if I'm selected, then I'll have the opportunity to ask those types of questions to find out.
Okay. So the process, we're going to have the interviews tonight, then we're going to have a meeting on August 22nd, April 22nd, and that will be time will be decided.
Perfect.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in. Nice to meet you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thanks, appreciate your
Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Stay under the speed limit.
What is true though, it goes from like 70 to 50.
Really?
And they're all lined up, and the inch out, and you don't have a chance.
On the main turnpike? Oh.
I was thinking of you today, they had the thing on NPR, I was talking about linguistics, and, the term will copy editors, that there are no more copy editors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like it drives people, when you're reading something, it drives you crazy because of the hyphens and the commas and just everything about, that.
Sentences that go
Yeah.
on forever.
Yeah. That's it, they were talking about all that, but it's funny. Archie, I thought they were talking about Mary North. I thought in the New Yorker wrote a whole story about it.
Oh,
People just don't know proper grammar anymore.
I'll have to look at that.
I looked it up to give it to you tonight, but I couldn't find it. But it was funny. They were going on and going on. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks again. Go get some water. We have a few more minutes. I can't believe I missed that. I liked your last question. That was good. Good question and a good answer. What was my last question?
Well, the barking, but forget the barking, that question. But-
Yeah. It was a good question.
The barking.
Leading question.
Well, I
realized that after.
Let's throw out the barking.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, some of the,
He forgot one question. He forgot a question.
What's NUTDC? I wish I still had that tape because it was like between you and then the person next in the background.
I'm sure it's still on YouTube.
Probably.
Is Mike Dwyer next?
Yes. Chief. Hi.
I see it.
I like Dwyer. Good to see you. Sorry I couldn't make it to the pancake breakfast, but both pancakes and syrups are like way offline for me.
Oh, what are you doing for the diet?
I just,
What's the problem? Is that you
it's
have
a, it's a health diet, not a lose weight diet.
oh, I just put everything in like that. Good enough. You're never cheap. Okay. Seven, yeah.
Yes?
Hi, Mike. Thank you for
Good
coming in.
evening. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, just to tell you a little bit of the process, we put out, jobs, we're looking for a new chief. We got between 50 and 60 applicants. We narrowed those down. Angus narrowed those down to a slate of finalists. Those finalists were interviewed, which you were one of them. And then 3 finalists were picked from that. We're going to interview all 3 tonight.
Great.
Basically asking them the same questions. There's a couple unique questions for each candidate, but on a whole, we're all going to ask everybody basically the same questions to try to
Great.
get a good feel of each candidate. After tonight, we're going to have our next meeting is April 22nd.
August.
I said August the first time. April 22nd.
Okay.
I'm gonna write it down. April 22nd, and that night we'll be choosing the chief.
Okay.
Well, we're gonna make a motion to go into negotiations with the chief at that point.
Okay.
So that's when the decision will be made.
Great.
Just time if you have an opening statement, not required. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
Or something, keep brief.
Brief.
And then- Yeah, brief. We're not, we ask the other gentleman, and we'll ask the one after you. And then we'll start the questioning.
Fantastic. So thanks again to the Board of Selectmen for inviting me in here tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you. And also to the town manager, Angus Jennings. Thank you again for including me in the first round of interviews. And I understand how much can go into this type of process. So I understand it's a lot of work. So I do thank you for that opportunity. Again, for those who don't know me, I'm Michael Dwyer, longtime resident of town. Graduated Pentucket Regional High School in 1992. That's pretty much when I started my first opportunities to work within the town's public safety departments. Just after high school, I started working with a family company in the private sector, and I shortly thereafter joined the fire department, which I still am a member to this day. I've had the opportunity to rise through the public safety departments, the emergency management agency. I'm serving as a deputy director right now, currently. I've had the opportunity to work as a dispatcher and as a reserve police officer. Through that transition, I got the opportunity to leave the private sector and work as a full-time dispatcher, and then I got the opportunity to work as a full-time police officer for the town, which I've been doing ever since. So again, I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to talking with you tonight.
Joe?
Mike, so, 5 years ago, I don't know if we were sure how much of an opioid impact we have, but I think today we know it's in the community. So this is a very open-ended question, so how do you
Sure.
approach that whole topic?
Well, early on, under Chief Holmes, I had the opportunity to work alongside with Officer Forney to create a Narcan program for our first responders, also firefighters, and also the police officers. Working into that program, we were able to get all the necessary licensing and equipment that it was needed to deploy Narcan for anybody experiencing an opioid overdose, whether it's a police officer providing that service or a first responder through the fire department. So early on, we were starting to see the effects of the opioid crisis affecting the town of West Newbury and some of its citizens.
Save some lives.
Yeah, so with that program, we were able to put them in all the emergency vehicles on both sides of the building And to this date, we've saved a lot of people and provided them with a lot of aftercare. So,
Excellent. Okay. How do you incorporate social media into policing, or should you?
well, I think social media is a really important part of law enforcement now. We're using that to get information out to people, and we're also looking for them to provide us with information. Sometimes it's daily. A lot of that information that is accessible to people through their smartphones is information that we can utilize to solve a crime, provide enforcement to a particular part of town or a street where there may be vehicular traffic that's of concern. So it's really important, and that is something that I would see that we would focus on and continue to push.
How do you, like, who would be in charge of that?
Well, you want the most technologically savvy person to be doing it. You really need somebody who
But what if
understands.
what if he wasn't available to do that any longer?
Well, we have a lot of great men and women on the department that understand social media.
So you're saying it's assign it to somebody?
Certainly.
All right, good. So this is a two-part question, so
Sure.
I'm going to throw out both parts, but can you talk about your procedure you would use to hire somebody, and then the second part is then to promote somebody, so two very different. Okay.
So as far as hiring personnel, whether it be dispatchers or members of the police department, we would want to make sure that we have a consistent plan in place, a program in place for hiring. I know currently we utilize almost a hiring list that's done through Great Bay Community College, and that provides us with a list of candidates that attain certain grade levels, attain certain grades of a test that they all take. Yeah. That's used to provide us with almost a master list to go through and pick out candidates that we believe would be the right fit for the department. As the new chief, if selected, I would want to review the systems that we have in place right now to see if it's appropriate for the individuals that we're looking to hire. West Newbury is a unique community, and we want to make sure that we have members of the department that also can work professionally, but are also going to meet the needs of us as a department and the community as a whole. Same would go with promoting. I would want to have a process that's consistent and fair. I think that that's really important for the long-term health of a department, such as West Newbury Police. I think it would be a priority to make sure that we have a system in place that's fair, that qualified candidates can participate in.
Okay. How would you translate your management experience in the fire department to your command experience to the police department?
So I've been very fortunate to have many opportunities through my career here in town. I've always made it a point to work with chiefs when I've been a member of the different departments and agencies to assist them in any way I can. I've had a lot of experience in the private sector with managing $1 million contracts. When I started working on the Board of Engineers as a board member, I was transitioning the payroll function and the budgeting function of the previous board to the new board. Working with payroll, working with the budget, working with capital planning. Those are all the things that I did on the fire department. It would be a seamless transition to bring that over to the police department. I think at this time as we all know, we have a pretty significant fleet over in the fire department. So from a capital perspective, there's a big dollar amount associated with all that equipment. Multiple line items within the fire department budget, a little bit less on the police side. But again, we're talking about a full-time operating department versus an on-call fire department.
Okay.
Can you describe how you would see your interactions with the selectmen, FinCom, and town manager regarding the budgeting process?
So the one, again, the one thing that I have, I believe that sets me apart from other candidates is my knowledge of the inner workings of the town of West Newbury. Again, I'm familiar with all the boards and committees that are a part of the budgeting process. Also the government operating of the town. Was that, I just want to make sure I answer your question properly, so.
Well, just your interactions regarding the budgeting process.
Yeah, so as far as communications, presenting various articles at town meeting, I've been doing that as a member of the fire department, so I'd be continuing to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Archie?
Thanks, Joe.
The population of Massachusetts and West Newbury are both continuing with age. West Newbury even more so than the Commonwealth as a whole. What changes in police resources, procedures, activities do we need to what changes do we need, or do we not need changes to deal with this?
So a lot of the things that have changed through my career here in town is safety in the schools. That's a serious concern these days. Making sure that the staff have the appropriate training and planning to handle a crisis if it were to occur at the high school, middle school, or the elementary school. We have a really great community. And at times, the service that we want to make sure we provide to the community is keeping people safe, providing access to the department if they have concerns or questions. So we have seen a lot of changes across the state and nationally.
No, but so how would we get at the how would we the issues of maybe crime or traffic management isn't quite as necessary, is diminishing in terms of, if we have a population of a lot of people that are housebound or aging in place in the community, this is becoming a more gray community, you might say. So do we need to change anything to address that?
I don't think so. I think we're always going to take every incident and manage that professionally and effectively. I think that if we have concerns, we're going to address those. We are seeing changes in training as far as officer training is concerned. There's a lot more mental health components built into our in-service training that we receive annually, including opioid related calls and how to manage that type of crisis. Did that answer your question,
Okay.
Archie? Yeah.
Give us a couple of examples of innovative policing programs, new things that you implemented or worked on.
Circling back to opioids, there's a big push right now. It obviously started down on Cape Ann and Gloucester, but there's a push right now to provide outreach to individuals who have problems with opioid addiction. And Newburyport Police has started that initiative. I'm a representative for the police department for that program. And basically what it does is it gives us access to individuals who are looking for some level of help to work with them to find solutions to their problems. That's one of the newest initiatives that we've participated in. I believe strongly in those types of programs. They're not designed to fix everybody. and fix every problem, but it is an opportunity for us to provide support to citizens of the town that need it and want to reach out for assistance with that. I've worked with Council on Aging throughout my career and with the schools to provide support to, again, those who need help, whether it's clothing, whether it's food. Most recently, we've been very successful with initiatives collecting food for the town food bank through the Council on Aging, through the Page Elementary School.
Okay. As you're aware, there's been some turnover in the upper management of the police department. A couple of chiefs, an interim chief now. So, if you were chosen, how would you build consensus, get everyone on board, and just build a camaraderie? I guess you might say with the department. How would you handle that?
So again,
as you know, coming from within, you're aware with what's going on. So that's an issue that's going to have to be addressed.
So again, that comes with building trust and communicating. Communication is my strong skill. I will have the opportunity to speak with the members of both departments, police and dispatch, if I get this opportunity. And that's going to be important because you need to listen to what people have to say, what concerns they have, what needs they may have. We may find that there's training needs or equipment needs. But again, that's going to be with consistent lines of communication and building trust with all the members.
Archie, can I just jump in on that?
Go ahead.
So, building consensus, but kind of a different part of that is how would you go from, right now your bosses are the sergeants, interim chief, whatever you want to call them. How would you go from being you report to that to being their manager?
Well, again, sitting down and having an open, honest conversation, explaining what the needs of the department are and the different goals and missions of the department, and working together as a team. You have a leader, you have a chief, and that person is in charge of the department, but at the end of the day, you have to have a team, and everybody has to work together for a common goal. That probably won't be as easy on day one, but I will.
Very difficult for many days.
Yeah, but that is something that I would strive to find success with.
Thank you.
Mike, the department has added a few more positions in the last few years, and we have heard from chiefs in the past that by doing so, this should cut down on overtime. And that's one of the reasons we've added additional positions. It wasn't the only reason, but that's been stated as one of the reasons to add more people, which we have done. But it has not had any effect whatsoever in the amount of overtime that has taken place in the police department. In fact, it seems to go up. So not a magician, but any thoughts on how that could be addressed?
Well, and again, that's a great question, and I've always heard that concern, and it is a real concern. It's a significant financial concern, especially for the taxpayers. But one thing that we do is we provide around-the-clock service. We have to put people out there to respond to calls and investigate crimes, and that does come with a cost. My leadership style is certainly going to be to analyze how we currently do our business and how we do our shift filling and what goes to overtime and what doesn't go to overtime, to see what we can do to try to minimize that. I don't think anybody, including myself, feels that there's a never-ending pile of money. At the end of the day, we understand that this comes with a cost. But I would certainly make that a priority to look at how things are being done today and see where we can address that in the future.
Okay. Glenn?
Mike, describe your philosophy on the SRO, how you implement it in the schools. This is going to be a two-part question.
Sure.
Can you answer that, and then I'll ask the other one.
Oh, okay. So as far as my philosophy with SRO, I think that is a very important position that we have currently in the schools, primarily the high school and the middle school. I think that is certainly a position that we could work. It's tricky because I started out as a day patrol officer who was almost a liaison to the schools. So many of us in the day shift would work as kind of a quasi SRO. Now that I've had the opportunity to work in that position, I see really the need for it at so many levels.
Has this reinforced your feeling about it or not?
It's changed my views on it. At first, I believed that the liaison approach, working with a day shift officer, could be effective. But seeing a lot of the things that are going down, that are occurring at the schools, and seeing the need for support from parents, students, staff members, it certainly, I think, is a very important position that we have here for the police department. Again, there could be some changes that I would look to implement if given the opportunity to be the chief. But I do feel that it's a very important position to maintain.
Are you willing to share any of those changes?
Again, I think that we could look at, the way that we implement coverage down at the school. I still have a belief that we could utilize day patrol to be down there. For instance, right now, if there's a week vacation, that SRO could take the week off, or now we have 3 patrol officers available for the town. That could be helpful if there's a lot of calls or if there's storms, but sometimes I think we need to revisit how we allocate that coverage.
Okay. Well, us being a regional district, we have 2 other towns and school districts. So what would be your management style, I guess I would say, to appropriate the cost sharing of the SRO with the other towns and or the school district, knowing that the SRO is not utilized 365 days a year, but it does come from us.
Yeah, and the way the SRO position is laid out now is at any time the officer could be pulled from the school and utilized for an emergency happening in town. The schools are in our town, so that's the responsibility of us. But I can understand the concerns from other communities that we have. What is that person doing? Is that person or is that officer supporting our needs in our community too? I would look into that again to see if we can do that better or if there's a better approach to that. Again, a lot of the inner workings to that program I wasn't necessarily aware of when it was developed, but I would like to review that to see how we can better, again, provide service to our community, but also if there's a component to working within the district.
Do you have much interaction with the other chiefs being the SRO?
Yes. Yep. There's several programs that we've put together that we want their support and we want their feedback as to how we're going to implement that locally here in West Newbury, but also district-wide. We recently applied for a grant that would provide training for emergency response. It's referred to as mass casualty training, but we're looking to provide funding through that grant to actually provide instruction to all the staff members district-wide. So that was a big push with all three chiefs, all three fire chiefs, to make sure that we were all in agreement as to how we would make that program work. And again, we received feedback from the superintendent and the assistant superintendent as well to make sure that they approved what was going to take place with their staff members.
Okay. Being part of the department, you know what the type of training that goes on there. Do you see any new training that you would institute as a chief for your officers to make it a better police force?
Yeah, there's every year, every month, there's new training. Some of it doesn't necessarily apply to what we do here in town, but there are opportunities, I think, for us. There's a lot of traffic safety programs. Again, school safety is the big push right now for training for first responders, including law enforcement. We're looking to implement a program that's offered by the American Heart Association, referred to as CPR in schools. We're looking to push that out district-wide to provide really quick life-saving training, CPR, defibrillation for staff and students. Our goal
Is there a defibrillator in the high school?
There's several, yeah.
Okay.
And by law, they have to be in certain parts of the school. But this program, we receive funding locally, and this is going to give us the opportunity to hopefully start in the fall with training all of the seniors. There's no requirement in Massachusetts that they have to learn CPR, but we would like to push that out as an option for the students at the school.
You are now in the position to negotiate contracts with the town. As the chief, you will be in a management role on the other side, teaming with the town manager and the selectmen. How do you see your role in that arrangement?
So my role is going to be obviously to make sure that the department is going to be operating properly, and that's going to be through proper funding. It's going to be really important for me to communicate that to our needs to the Board of Selectmen, also to work with the town manager at that level. Again, it's going to be important to see what we need to operate effectively and professionally, and that will be communicated through me to the board, various committees, and the town manager.
Okay. To go on Archie's question about our aging population,
Mm-hmm.
the Department of Motor Vehicles renews driver's licenses every 5 years. The elderly may become unsafe on the road during those 5 years. How would you monitor and or address that issue? Since it's a very sensitive issue, taking someone's license away if necessary.
Certainly. So we encounter that in various ways. At times we respond to motor vehicle crashes where we discover that an individual should not be driving at that moment. That tends to be a really difficult time for them because obviously nobody ever expects to be in a car accident, but they probably are driving themselves to their doctor's appointment. They're trying to run errands. They're trying to get through their day. So that's how we encounter those at times. Other times we receive calls from family members who are concerned that their mom or their dad is no longer safe behind the wheel. And that involves us going out and talking with them, trying to find a solution for them. Again, I have an aging father. I understand how it works, and I understand what he has to do for himself on a regular basis. So there's a little bit of there's some compassion that we need to have, or empathy. But it starts with conversation and communicating with the family and trying to work out a plan. We want to keep them safe, and we want to keep all the other motorists and pedestrians in the town safe as well. So that would be my approach.
Some people, the first impression of a police department is a 2-inch piece of bulletproof glass and have to talk into a microphone to somebody. I don't know if you find that off-putting or not. I understand it's a necessity, but what would you propose to try to communicate a different feeling of a first impression to people who come in?
Well, again, it's really important to, at times, put yourself in other people's shoes. We quite regularly go around into the lobby when we're dealing with maybe an elderly resident who's hard of hearing and they can't hear us through that glass and microphone. That has certainly always been my approach since I started here, is to make sure that if somebody has a need that needs the attention, I'm going to give that to them if I have the time. So that's, again, it all goes back to communication and providing professional and consistent service to the community.
Okay. What kind of, if you had the opportunity to be a police chief, what kind of police chief would you think you'd be? Would you be one that would be up in the office? Would you be one in a patrol car all the time? Or would you be a hybrid? Just kind of give us a vision of maybe your daily routine, or just what type of policeman you'd be. Excuse me, chief you'd be.
Sure. So again, my philosophy throughout my whole career, regardless of the department that I worked for, the agency that I've worked for, has been to be a part of the community, whether it's being present during events or being out with students and parents at bus stops during the morning hours. Certainly would be assisting the officers during emergency response. There will be times where I'll have to be in the office working on budgets and capital plans and all the things that are going to go with that title. But again, my whole career here in town has been dedicated to providing that in-person, face-to-face support, and I believe that that's important for a small town, community-based police department.
Okay. Do you have any follow-ups? Do you have anything to say to us, or ask us questions, or do you want to talk a little bit about yourself or anything like that? Can you give me the opportunity to the other candidate and go to the next one?
Yeah, during my first interview, I provided the town manager with a copy of a draft transition plan. I believe it's important that no matter the organization, when there's a change in leadership, it's important to make sure all of the town leaders, members, organizations understand what this transition is going to look like, and to make sure that it's done with a smooth transition. I put a lot more thought to it since the first interview, and I made some changes. So
Okay, thank you.
Again, it kind of lays out what my plan will be over the first year.
Is Is there anything you want to speak to this specifically, or you want to give us a few minutes to read through it to see if there are any questions?
Yeah, you could certainly read through it if you had questions. That's
Basically, similar, yeah. Well, at least to the one I have.
Yeah, I just put a lot. Yeah, it's fluid, and I wanted to make sure that over the course of the first phase of this this process, that I wanted to revisit it to see if there was anything I was missing, or if you would. Yeah, so.
Hey, anything else that you might want to tell us?
No, again, I appreciate this opportunity. It means a lot to be a part of this process. Again, I've spent a long professional career here in town and had the opportunity to grow up here with my family, and this is a wonderful opportunity that I really appreciate having your time tonight.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you, Mike.
Yeah. Fancy one?
I don't use fancy pens.
Did you get a pen like you graduated?
I got a few, like cross pens.
I got a set, I think I got some like from an album.
And they,
I think that's the last
they,
thing. Yeah.
they don't
Little
write,
set.
they
like
don't
this one.
write well.
That's one thing you don't need a fancy thing about. The cheap ones, I do have somebody in my office that has to buy, and I forget which kind it is. You get it at Staples, but he wants a specific pen.
I like that there's these new pens that are very, very fine, but
That's the one he likes.
but they write very, very easily. I was using one today. I'm continuous. I'm writing all the time with the charts and stuff. So we don't have all computerized. So I still write some stuff. I never can find a pen.
I just comment while we're in between here. I could be wrong, but my recollection is, just for your information, that the defibrillators, at least some of them at the high school, were paid for in an hour formation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's good to know.
Including the sign in front of the. That kind of tampered down.
The sign issue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Change bothers people, then they realize, oh, well, this is actually kind of handy.
Not so bad.
It looks nice, and everybody who worked on it did a good job.
Yeah.
And I think they toned down the lights a little bit, which was good.
Maybe they did.
Oh, good.
Good evening. Good, how are you?
Hi, Jeff. Good. I think Joe just went to get anchor now.
Hi, Jeff.
Can you tell Joe that we're ready? I will. Please, thank you. They already have people are already posting the numbers for the school on West Newbury News.
What was it?
Hmm?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so So somebody had to have gone into that meeting.
I thought that school officials were not.
No, I meant somebody like from.
Oh, they just heard from them.
It was somebody else on West Newbury News that posted the numbers, and it might have been from the treasurer's office, I don't know. They had something.
Are they correct numbers?
I don't know, looks a little less. Yeah, I don't know, I can't ever figure it out. Our thing went up like to 57.6, but the,
Well, didn't Grant go?
Yeah.
yeah, everybody went.
I'm pretty
No,
sure.
I'm just saying somebody's posting it on West
Oh.
Newbury News. You know what I mean? So that individual, it's an open meeting, anybody can go.
Right, right.
So, or this person got the numbers from Goldberg.
52.7 million grant.
Yeah,
Is that what it says?
And that's what it says on this site.
but it's very confusing. I think that we have to get that out there is because, like they said they're gonna match like 57 point something %, but then the only matchable things like is 36 point something %.
No, I'm sorry, it went up to 57.63 from 52.89.
Yes. Yeah, but read the next line. With the,
Reimbursement for the entire project is 36.04.
yeah,
Oh.
but all their numbers have been based on 40%
Total
on.
stayed at 146.3.
Yeah.
Then your, legs went.
Story of my life.
Does it net down to what the town share is?
Does it say what the town share is?
No.
It's saying town share 93.5 and MSBA is 52.7. This is according to James Niziak.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the same one I saw.
Yeah, he's an anti.
Oh, he is?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
So you just look out in the hallway and see if those numbers correspond.
It just gives the household, it doesn't give the aggregate.
Yeah, I'd get the official numbers.
No, but he has some printout from Goldberg or something, doesn't he?
Oh, he does.
Yeah, he's got something he put up here.
Yeah, from the treasurer's office.
Oh.
She's the chairperson. Okay.
Hi, Jeff.
Well, yeah,
Back to,
Sorry.
that's all right.
back to the reason why we're here. Thanks for coming in early.
Yes.
That makes sense. Okay, you all set?
Yep.
You all set?
Yes.
Okay, welcome. Okay, welcome. Okay. Welcome. I just want to explain the process here, then we're going to have questions from each of us. So, it started out when we posted the job, we got between 50 and 60 applicants. Those were reviewed by Angus, and we got brought down to a slate of finalists. You were one of those finalists, where then you had an initial interview with Angus. That was taped. We reviewed those tapes and brought it down to 3 finalists.
Okay,
You're the last of 3 that we're going to interview tonight. After that, we'll be making a decision at our next open meeting, which will be April 22nd.
okay.
That's basically the process. There might be maybe some follow-up questions after this. Which Angus will get you. I don't think so, but if there are, Angus will get those questions to you. Joe's going to start, then Archie, then I. We've asked basically the same questions to each candidate. A couple of them are unique because you have one individual who's from Maine, somebody else was a fire chief, and you are the acting chief. So
Okay.
there are some unique questions, but not many. We're going to ask the same questions to each one to make it fair, and so we can get a good cross-section of understanding what the position is and how you would be the full-time chief.
Very good.
At this time, if you have any like opening
Yeah.
statement, and this is something brief, that you have said the
Nope.
same thing, and just.
He is meant to be brief.
That's all right. No, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to work with the board and the town manager over the last 4 months as the acting chief. I think things are going smoothly on the police department, and I'm glad I'm here tonight.
Joe Chairman, I just want to make sure you have the mic close to you, so that'd be good.
You can yell if you like.
Thank you.
Or at least we get yelled at if people at home can't hear.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with here, it has to do with home. Okay.
So opioids have become more prevalent in the community, particularly during the last few years. And we've had overdoses. This is just from a very general point of view. My question, you can answer any way you want. How would you go about approaching that issue?
Well, we have had some arrests for opioids in town on the department. There have been some overdoses in town. I think education and treatment is still top of the list to help with the crisis. A recent report through the state says the number of overdose deaths are down, and I believe that's true, slightly down, but I don't believe the number of overdoses has really dropped. It's the availability of Narcan is what's brought the number of deaths down.
Right.
So it's obviously still a front burner topic and issue, and not only in West Newbury, but in the whole region.
Okay. Is there anything you do particularly to like address or help people, or, I mean, that's, everything you said is very accurate.
Well, I mean, like I said, treatment is the main, and education, and start in the schools. There's programs available. I know that the school already does, and through their health classes, et cetera. But education is really the big thing with opioids.
Okay. Would you incorporate social media into West Newbury policing or not?
Yeah, I mean, social media is everywhere today. I find out from my kids, that's how people communicate, other than they don't talk on the phone anymore. They're posting things to Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, etc. A lot of people use that venue for communication, and I think if the police department could get their messages out, you know, in traditional ways as well as social media, would be helpful.
Okay. I have a question that has kind of a two-part, so I'm going to ask each part at a time. What procedure would you use, or how would you go about hiring an officer?
Well, we have a policy in place for hiring. We advertise, we get applications.
Well, do you agree? Would you change that, or would
No, I think what we do now is good. They go through a standardized testing at Great Bay. They have to have a certain score on the grades. We have oral boards given. There's a comprehensive background checks done for employees. I think how we have it now is working well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What procedure would you use to promote somebody? How would you approach that?
I think you have to have a set standard that you can't change every time there's a promotion that comes up. Policies have to be followed in fairness to everyone. Tests given, oral boards given. The officers should be on the job for a certain period of time, be knowledgeable of the job. They're going to be supervising other employees under them, so they need to be able to answer questions correctly. So you really need to get the right person when you're making promotions.
Okay. Can you describe your interactions that you would have with the Finance Committee, Selectmen, Town Manager regarding the budgeting process? I know that's a new area for you.
Yep, it is.
It's
a new area. I obviously can't do it by myself. You'd have to have, be able to speak with all the boards, their concerns, their needs. They need to understand the police department's needs. It's basically going to work as a team effort between all the different boards in order to get a good budget forward. That's going to enable the police department to still provide a level of service, but also being fiscally responsible.
Okay. I think that's all my questions. So, Archie. Oh, actually, no, I didn't. That is all, I'm sorry.
Okay. Jeff, the population of Massachusetts and West Newbury is aging. Median age in West Newbury is more than the Commonwealth, and the Commonwealth is more than the United States as a whole. So do you think that the changing demographics of the town necessitates any changes in police procedures or activities or things, anything that we need to do to address basically the aging of the population?
I think the police department now does a good job in handling calls if we have elderly callers, victims of crime. If they need assistance with other matters, the police department will go beyond just investigating crimes and assist the elderly in town. I know the Council on Aging does a lot. We work with them when we can or when we're asked to. But I think we're pretty up to speed with where we need to be with dealing with the elderly.
Okay. Give us a couple of examples of some innovative policing programs that you've implemented or worked on during your career.
One of the things that I helped get going was a civilian academy. It was a few years back it seemed to be really popular at the time. I think we went 4 or 5 years. We had a full house every time we advertised for it. The classes were fun. There was a lot of younger people, some of them are police officers now. We advertised a couple of years ago to try to get that going again, and unfortunately we didn't get enough interested parties at that time. That's definitely something that I thought was worthwhile, and I'd like to try that again.
Could you ask what was that about? Could you define civilian?
Sure, would have a group that was interested. They'd come in. It was either 6 or 8 weeks, one night a week. They'd come in. Like first night would talk about what the police does in town specifically, how people are hired as police officers. We go over all the equipment that the police officers use. Another night we might do like OUI, arrest, field sobriety, breathalyzer. We'll take them to the jail for a visit at Middleton, so they can see that end of it. We'll do police procedures, fingerprinting, and other things. Like I said, we drew a younger crowd, which was good, but we also had some older adults that were interested and also came in.
As you're aware, there's been some change in the chief position in the department in the last few years, probably more than we'd like, and so people like consistency. People want to know what both the employees and the community. So how would you build consensus with other members of the department if you were made chief? How would you bring everybody back together on the same page?
Well, in the police department, there's only going to be one boss. But that person needs to be fair with everyone, treat everyone equally. If any situations arise, some of the worst things to deal with are internal problems with an employee, but that has to be handled quickly and effectively and fairly. Everyone's treated the same. Everyone's given their responsibilities. I believe in, say, if an officer has an investigation for a house break, sometimes they'll just write a report and it gets kicked off to somebody else to handle. I don't believe that's the way it should go. The officers should be the ones that go through all the steps with either the assistant of a sergeant or the chief, so they can learn how to be effective police officers. There's a great group of employees at the department now. Everybody's got an outside life going on, children, families. That has to be taken into account, empathetic with people. the employees' needs. But at the bottom line is everyone needs to be treated fairly, consistently.
Okay. The department has added a few new officers, new positions in the last few years. And one of the things the board has been told that one of the reasons for doing this is that it would help cut down on the amount of overtime that accrues in the budget. And since we've added people, that hasn't seemed to happen. It seems like the overtime budget continues to increase yearly, even though we've added new officer positions. Is that something that's inevitable, unfixable, or is there some help to that?
I don't think that's measurable today. We hired 2 new full-time officers. One is out of the academy this Friday. The other one is in the academy till the end of August. Until he gets out and we can get everybody on the schedule, that's when we're going to see the real test as whether that's working or not. And as far as the overtime, unfortunately, we run 3 shifts, 24 hours a day. Overtime's tough to avoid in this job.
No, I understand that,
I think-
but we haven't got more. The number of hours in the week is the same as it was 10 years ago, but it actually seems like we have more overtime. So
I think that the short answer is until all the officers are out of the academy and on the schedule, that's when we're going to see that.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead, Glenn.
so when Mr. Archibald brought that up to you, when we were talking about the budget, you felt confident and you were able to, I think it was $2,000 or something, it was a little bit over $2,000, if my memory serves me correct. And you said, okay, I can deal with that. You can take that out of the overtime account. So what was your thought process behind that?
Well, if we've had that, the amount of money I believe that was mentioned was money that was left in this fiscal year, or
I think it was over. I think it was going to be over this fiscal year.
The increase in IT is like,
It was going to be over.
about $2,800.
all right,
It would. We all have to, I think we need to put this in perspective that just because you have been the chief for 4 months, this isn't your budget. This budget was put in before you became chief.
I think a lot of the line items in the budget, it's just, they just get increased every year. Maybe sometimes with no rhyme or reason to it. So we'd have to take a closer look at all the line items. I've already done a lot of work with the budget and made some changes on the department that have already started showing a savings of money.
Okay, Glenn.
Can you tell me your philosophy, describe your philosophy with the SRO?
Okay, well, we're in West Newbury, Massachusetts here. We don't have an industrial park, we don't have malls. It's basically a bedroom residential community. But what we do have that brings in hundreds of students and hundreds of faculty every day is a middle school and a high school. I think the SRO position is very important. Officer Dwyer already has built a good rapport at the schools. I try to get down there as much as possible. I think that the position is welcomed at the school. And it's important to have one SRO that can build a rapport with the students as well. The old way we did business is whoever was on day shift would pull a call at the school. And you take the report and handle it. But with an SRO there, if there's an incident at night that involves a student anywhere in the district, the officer, the SRO, would get the information and be able to bring it to the school's attention, maybe talk with the student. So I think it's a very important position that we keep in town. And the bottom line is, regional schools are not. They're in West Newbury, and we're gonna be responsible for safety and having the SROs.
Yeah, actually, I don't want to, yeah, that's a good point, because it's in our, we're gonna have to respond anyway, because it's in our town.
Correct. I think it's more important to, like I said, have one person being able to build a
And
report.
if we have a new school, everything will be in our town.
Yep.
No one's thought of that.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not the football.
But they're using, yeah, but they're using Groveland water, so we're happy. So, the second part of that question is, you know that it's a regional school district, we discussed. So, on the budgeting portion of it, so it kind of gets, not convoluted, but it's a little bit different, because we have a full-time officer. He's not gonna be utilized 365 days a year at the school. So there are some costs that are borne by the town, but the district, and then the other two towns are getting some type of benefit from it. So kind of like what's your philosophy of like the host benefit or something like that? Trying to make everybody happy?
I don't think that's gonna be a possibility. I've been looking at the way other schools pay for the positions of SROs. Some towns pay 100%. Other towns do what we do. They get some amount of money from the schools. I haven't found any towns that each town's contributing. I'm still looking into it, so that might be something that's happening. But I think the other towns are going to say the same thing. Well, the schools are in your town, even though our students go there. I understand that it's a cost to have an SRO. He is an officer assigned by the police chief to the school. He's not a school employee. So I think it's going to come down onto the department to fund the positions. If something can be worked out with the other towns in the regional school district, that would be great too. But I think you're going to get a lot of pushback on that.
Good on this answer. How would you see this, so let's do like a hypothetical situation. There's kind of a large man on Merrill Street that during the day that you might need another person to take him down. So do you see, and I use that, if something unexpected happened in town, do you see that SRO to be able to respond, or will he stay at the school and you'd call somebody else in?
That's why we have tasers, Glenn. No.
You have to put it on high.
Before I leave,
Mike,
this is recorded. Before I leave, I want somebody to test it on me.
Officer Dwyer frequently responds out of the schools to accidents, other calls. If there's an issue with computer equipment in the station, he'll take care of that. So the short answer is he will respond out for other emergencies in town.
So we had with the chief who left, we had 10 full-time officers, okay, including that chief. And now we have, with 2 people in the academy.
Yep.
We have 9 full-time officers. How do you see the number? Because now you'll be, if you're lucky enough to become chief, we're not increasing. So how do you see that work?
Well, the only fly in the ointment is I stayed on my 4 and 2 rotation, so there wouldn't be a scheduling issue during the day. If I was a permanent chief, it's traditionally a Monday through Friday job. So I'd have to look.
But 365 days, I mean.
Correct.
You're on call 365 days.
We'd have to look at the scheduling. Things are, I think, going pretty good now. I'm not going to give away the position that's what we already have until I can look at how the scheduling would fit and how things would work. But I just have to take a look at how it would lay out.
Good, thank you. I understand that you're very familiar with the training that's going on right now. If you become the new chief, do you see or feel that there would be any new training that would be instituted for the officers that would help policing in the future or even in the present day?
Well, there's always new training classes coming out. I got a couple of brochures today for different classes. The state mandated training is 40 hours a year for every officer, including reserve officers, and the classes that come out are set by the state, the training council, the topics, etc. I'm changing the way we get it's called in-service training. I'm changing the way we get in-service training done now, which should show us savings and overtime. Right now, for first responder and CPR, we have to hold 4 classes, 2 CPR, 2 first responders. Officers come in, usually on overtime, to take the classes. I also have to hire instructors, which cost about $1,500 a year, to teach the class. We can't use, say, for example, someone from the fire department who teaches CPR. It's not allowed by the training council. It has to be an instructor that's trained by the municipal training council. So that's an expense. If we're going to do the in-service over at Northern Essex, where the academy is now, that starts in October through April. I'd send an officer a week as their regular shift, so there'd be no overtime. They teach first responder and CPR over there as part of the curriculum during that week, so we wouldn't have to pay overtime for the classes here or for the instructors also.
Okay. Does the chief have to go through that 40 hours of training too?
Yeah, they do that they don't go through the weekly, they go off to a chief's training for that.
Vegas or something?
No, nothing good like that.
Okay, so you are now in the position that negotiates contracts between the town. As a chief, you will be on the management role, the other side, teaming with the town manager and the selectmen. How do you see your role in that arrangement?
Well, I think the union contracts are agreements between the town and the police. Obviously, being in the management position, I'd have to work with both sides towards getting a contract that's agreeable to everybody. So I think that would be my position. I don't know if the board or the town manager would be the one negotiating on the town's behalf.
You hope for the town manager.
So, I mean, that's something I could work with him with. Like I said, at the end of the day, something that's fair for both sides in order to, keep budgets down and also have a good contract for the guys.
Okay. You girls. This kind of piggybacks on Archie's question about the aging population in town and in Massachusetts. The Department of Motor Vehicles renews driver's licenses for every 5 years. An elderly may become unsafe on the road during that 5-year time. How would you monitor and or address that issue? It's a very sensitive issue.
It is a sensitive issue. I know, including my grandfather, when he was alive, had his license taken away, and that's like a huge deal to people, and I understand that. You come across elderly people that have been involved in accidents once in a while, and there's something that's just not right. Maybe the medication's off. Maybe they're just a little too old to be driving. We file an immediate threat with the state through the registry and include a police report. It doesn't automatically take their license forever, but what it does is it's going to force the person to get cleared by a doctor and then through the registry to get their license back. Sometimes, like I said, it might just be an issue that just came up, or it might be something that's come up and it is not going to go away, but the bottom line is the safety of all the motoring public is first priority.
Okay. And some people's first impression of a police department is to walk in, look at somebody that behind probably a 2-inch or whatever it is, bulletproof glass, and have to talk through a microphone it's not like a Bose speaker or something like that. They have a hard time. That's sometimes not a good impression because people aren't in a good situation. How do you, like, how would you try to handle that oppression and try to, in your management style, to make sure that first impression on a department would be a good one?
We frequently just go out into the lobby to deal with people. Unfortunately, bulletproof glass in police stations nowadays is a norm. You'll see it at the Patriots, the ticket counter, or anywhere else. But, we get out in the lobby, we'll go in the conference room or in the training room and sit down and talk with people. We don't just sit there and talk through the glass if it's anything more than, they're there to get a burn permit or have a quick question. We'll go out and interact with the people.
What type of chief do you think you are? Is it one that hangs out in the office and just delegates orders? One that you want to be out on the road? Or a little bit of both? Just tell us like how you would be as chief, maybe on a day-to-day basis.
I think a little bit of both. Obviously, there's a lot more administrative things that need to be done if you were in the chief's position permanently. I like to get out and talk to people. I've done that throughout my whole career in town. Met a lot of the residents that way. We have a good department of officers that go out and handle the calls. If something serious came in, I'd obviously go out. But like I said, I like to keep kind of a blended approach to the chief's job. It's not just hide up in an office, and I'm not going to be out running radar either on the back roads.
Seems like that's the full call we all get. Okay, great. Do you have any follow-up questions, Archie?
No, I'm good, yeah.
What about you, Joe?
I'm set.
Okay, so we'll give you the opportunity at the end, just if you want to say anything a little bit more about yourself, or any
Questions for us?
or any questions that you have of us, or anything like that.
Like I said, I've tried to do more than keep the seat warm since December. Try to move things forward. Like I said, some training changes. I know maybe it doesn't seem a big deal, but we get all our gas in Haverhill now instead of Newburyport. It's what I found between 20 and 50 cents a gallon cheaper. And today it was 32 cents cheaper. A small number, but at the monthly bill we got for fuel that just came in already went down a lot. So I would foresee at least $3,000-4,000 a year. We're using 600-700 gallons of fuel a month on the department. So it's going to add up. Just little things like that. I try to move forward. No, I know that we just went there. It was.
I probably spend more money or gas driving to another place, but I just won't because they are expensive.
I mean, so I'm looking at things. We need equipment. We need training. There's going to be occasional overtime that comes up. Like as far as the new cruiser goes that we got, I was able to use a new vendor and get a substantial savings over what was budgeted for the cruiser. The ACO needed a new car. We were able to not trade in the oldest cruiser and cheaply switch it over into an ACO vehicle. So that we're obligated to provide a vehicle to the ACO, so that's going to work out well. Newburyport's already looked at the car and happy with it. So I'm just trying to find ways to save money, and I'm still obviously getting up to speed with the whole Chiefs deal, but I feel like it's worked. It's been working well so far.
No. I know, I didn't want to get into it.
Anything else?
No, thank you for your time and consideration, and hopefully we'll talk again.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I know. That is the number. So what is that compared to what we thought?
I think it's off by 300,000.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, that's, I just got that on the MSB website.
Down.
The 300,000.
I asked Brad earlier when I saw that. One second, Jen, please.
Yeah.
Sorry. I
That-
asked Brad earlier because I go, hey, what,
I'm seeing numbers posted, so if we have an open meeting, people are gonna start asking us questions, are these the right ones? Don't know the numbers, basically, you might have lost 60K.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the MSB website. It says 52,752.
I think he said, 60K around. What was that, Jen?
I just have a question about the process. Were you guys aware that, Jeff Duran was gonna apply for the position when you made an interim? Or was that-
No, we were not.
Were you concerned about that when you saw his application, or?
No,
No.
it was open to everybody.
Sure.
I mean, it was open to everybody, but
But the only reason I ask is, I've seen it done that way, but a lot of times I've seen it done where the interim person is not somebody who applies, just for a sense of fairness in the process. And I was wondering if you guys had that conversation, or if anything came up about that.
Well, I mean, I think that was our understanding going back a long time ago, and he changed his mind, so.
But yeah, thanks. So there seems to have a lot of support.
oh, they were here for him?
I didn't notice.
I didn't know this.
that was kind of,
I don't know if I liked it or not. Yeah. Okay,
Are we done?
no,
Move to adjourn?
no, I want to talk about the budget a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the only reason why I wanted to talk about.
Can I just stand up for a minute before my back? That's all.
The only reason why, I don't wanna have any intense budget talks tonight. I just wanted to say, we mentioned the other night that we wanted to talk about it on the 22nd, but I wanna make sure Angus, you know, between ourselves to talk about it a little bit, that Angus has anything he needs, so he doesn't say, oh, I wish you told me beforehand. That's what basically kind of a heads up on. And have a better understanding of do we have any questions of, because some of the recommendations that the FinCom is gonna be coming out with Thursday on their booklet are gonna be different from ours. So I'd like to have some conversation about that on the 22nd also, to be able to make sure that we have the proper materials in place that we can educate if that's even a word, Archie, I don't know if it is, talk to the taxpayers at town meeting.
Yeah, so we can explain the differences,
Yeah.
why and what.
Are we, sorry. Are we rediscussing this now with the possibility of revisiting our votes on these on Monday, or no?
I'm not sure, because we might get more information that might change our mind, but who knows, I don't think so. But
Or we might disagree with something else. I mean, I don't, until you have a conversation, you don't know the answer.
that was a real conversation.
The one thing I did like, Angus, was your little summary page where we see what the actual bottom line is, the change, what the changes made. One way we took some down, put some up, and the overall difference wasn't that great, right? So if I'm just speaking for myself, if I was given better background material, I could easily change a few votes. That's all I have to say.
Okay. And, did you want to speak to that?
I just,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
well, I want to first acknowledge, not just for this board, but for anyone watching, that you've been put in a tough spot. That was not on purpose. You know, the kind of full plate that my office has had for quite a while, but the last few months, it's down to an 11, as they say. So,
Good.
so it wasn't by design, but I just want everybody to know that some of the information that got to the board in terms of some of the proposed changes on personnel budgeting, we received very late. Some of the seeds were planted earlier. We had some conversations over a couple of months, but in terms of some of the details that came up late, so that you know, there's definitely some takeaways in terms of next year's budget process. It's gotta start with the board much earlier. I've talked with, each of you individually, I think, about how that can play out on the calendar, but we are where we are. So I'm gonna make sure before I leave, town, for, you know,
Bangor.
sunny Bangor.
I like Maine, actually.
It goes, but, I'll make sure that you have in front of you everything I have in front of me in terms of my thinking of why I recommended what I recommended. And so some of that
Angus,
will-
do you still, I guess my question is, with our votes and the FinCom's votes and everything, do you still stand by by your recommended changes?
I do. I think the process has been flawed, and I own that. On the other hand, I can't look backwards and say I could have really done anything different, because I know every day I've been.
No,
here.
but you do stand by those numbers,
The
yes.
substance of the recommendations I stand by.
Okay.
So I think, you know, the process has been tough, so I'll have that in front of you. And one other, just briefly, Mike McCarron had given some good advice from a prior town meeting just today. I think he sent the email on, you know, if there is a difference on the floor of town meeting between FinCom and Selectmen, and he sent out kind of the actual language that the moderator used, and I think it was only maybe last year, it wasn't that long ago, where she basically, you know, framed the discussion, I think, very nicely in terms of where there were differences. So I think.
Well, let's wait after that 22nd meeting.
Yeah.
So, that 22nd meeting, you're leaving.
Yep.
We gotta post a meeting.
Yep.
So what do you wanna do?
So I'm gonna work with you on the agenda. On the agenda before I go. It won't be posted until I go and take a cake, or until, you know, next week, in case anything late.
So you're gone all of next week?
I am, but before I leave, every part of the packet that I'm responsible for will be done.
Okay, so what do we have so far on the agenda? We have the auditor coming in, we have, the chief's discussion,
That's right.
we have,
Fire engineers.
say it again? Board of Fire Engineers.
That's right.
So the chief's discussion should come, you know, in chronological order, but we know the auditors first, but and wherever
We want the
everything
chief's discussion
for
before,
the fire.
yeah. What else?
So we've got, the auditor as well has, brought forward a proposed contract for, the next 3 years, so that's more of a business item, but that's.
So but we don't, you take care of that, right?
It's actually under the legislation, the Board of Selectmen specifically.
It's
designates the auditor.
And that's one of the few things that we can sign a 3-year deal on, is that correct?
You can sign a 3-year deal.
On
Yeah,
anything.
you can't go more than 4 years.
You can't, the thing is, there's exemptions, you can't go any longer than your term. So we have a 3-year term. So then, but there are some exceptions, like the finance director had a 5-year term, there are some other weird ones.
Okay.
It's the length of your term.
The town manager review is scheduled for the 22nd, and I'm gonna be preparing kind of a write-up of goals that were set, where we are and all of
Has
that.
Mike got us what we're supposed to get? Or you were supposed to give it to us?
Well, he's gonna put it.
He's gonna put it in the,
Okay.
on the form.
And then you're gonna give that to us?
I don't know if I'm gonna give you a form, I'm writing something up.
Okay.
Okay, we need the form.
Okay, I can apply for it.
Okay, could you give it to us? I don't want it tonight, but can you make sure he has the blank form? that he can
I
put in
have
the
them
project?
somewhere, but
Yeah,
I gotta
I'd rather
dig, I'd have to dig.
I
Yeah.
know. So is there anything else?
Yeah, a couple other items. So we've got the Energy Advisory Committee with the MVP grant application to review that prior to submittal.
That's the one that Rick Parker wants to put, like a parking garage looking thing over the.
That's separate. This is something that, you know, I think they would definitely say, if we got this municipal vulnerability preparedness.
Well, this is for like the training of the staff.
It's basically like a green communities, a different form of green communities.
I would come in. Do they have to come in that day?
They need a letter of support, and they need a couple of things signed.
But when?
It's
By
due,
when?
it's due the following Friday, May 3rd.
Then they have to come in.
Yeah, they have to come
Are they gonna have all that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
For us by
Yep.
time you leave?
in. Yes.
Okay, that's all. I was just concerned for you. That's, making sure
I've
they
had-
weren't
Yeah.
holding up the packet.
No, not at all.
Alright.
No, I've been planning ahead. And this is something you may want to.
This is a lot of stuff.
Some good news, we've had some good news on the federal reimbursement for the March 2018 storms.
Yeah.
I was gonna do that just under town manager updates.
That's, why don't we, just in case, yeah, that's great news, actually.
Yeah, we've had some good news, so that's.
The March 20,
That was the
are
one.
we talking,
That was the one, not this, last March. Remember when we didn't have any power for like a week?
right,
Yeah,
right.
Leanne Dell worked her butt off and was able to document a lot of money we're gonna be getting.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
A lot.
that's
Yeah, so that's-
fantastic.
When you hear that amount, you're gonna go you're gonna go, wow.
Wow,
She did a
okay,
great
I'm
job.
psyched.
She does a great job.
And I will say that Leanne has told me whether the amount was a big number or a small number, she would do the work anyway.
Oh my, if it was 1,000 or 100,000,
And I've been at the department head
They're gonna-
level doing that work, and I've told her I really have a tremendous value for
Yep.
for what she
no,
does.
she does, it doesn't matter, sometimes she does all the work, we get nothing.
Mhm.
So you gotta do the work to be able to even be considered, so she starts from day one.
So that's,
That, we don't want anything else
yeah,
unless.
that's pretty full.
That's
unless-
enough.
Unless it's absolutely imperative. And do we have any executive session stuff?
As you know, the library board of directors is going through the recruitment of director candidates. They have interviews scheduled for tomorrow night and Saturday. Those are executive session because they're preliminary. The library board's looking to interview finals candidates.
So why don't you put,
on May 7th.
why don't you put that on the agenda, and if we don't need it, we'd have to act.
Well, no, it is timely because it's the discussion we had the other night in terms of what.
I still don't okay, can you give me a little,
Yeah.
I don't understand our role in that.
Well, and this is.
We've never had a rule in this before.
No.
So under the town manager legislation, the board of selectmen sets compensation for all employees. So, and that's very.
So we're gonna have it on the 22nd.
Right, because,
Put it on.
and so let's say, for instance, our personnel policy provides, certain 2 weeks vacation. So if you hire a director and they've been.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
The negotiation came to 3 weeks, we would have to approve that.
Right, so rather than having a situation where they're negotiating without knowing, what I recommended to them is that they kind of.
Are they coming in, or are they gonna give you recommendations that you're gonna tell us?
I think you and I can work on what's preferable. I think either way is fine, as long as they can get some guidance on any parameters.
Well, as long as you have what they want and we give the guidance, we don't need them to come in.
Fair enough.
If they wanna come in, they're more than welcome,
Yeah.
but the chairperson or
So
whomever,
basically,
right?
I'm gonna
You all right with that?
set the framework.
As long as you have the message,
Yep.
it's their message,
Mhm.
there's no need, is it all right with you?
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, okay, let's go back to the budget thing, so.
That won't be a long discussion.
What's that?
It won't be a long discussion. Especially if we have all the backup material and we've done our homework. And what you've provided us even tonight was far superior than what we had before.
Yeah, this is, I like it.
And that was produced between the Monday night meeting that you had and the Tuesday night meeting. This is a quick work.
No, but
You don't
it's
have- you
it's
don't have the
helpful.
detail.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
gives us a-
But, okay, so could
Okay,
we,
you need.
I'm sorry, okay, could we change this? Are we too late if we wanted to change something? I'm just saying hypothetically.
Well, it's still going to be, it's still gonna be in the, it's still gonna be in the FinCom booklet because it's getting printed. It was done last night, it's gonna get printed today or tomorrow.
It's gonna be done tomorrow.
Yes,
We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
600 copies, but we can do whatever we want because, and if they read that, if somebody reads that on the town meeting floor, then we
We
can
just
say,
say,
hey, listen, this is what
we
we feel
agree
now.
or we don't agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Or
okay,
if
okay,
we
fine.
say, This is how we feel.
Okay.
Okay, make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.